Hello. So this is a video I recorded in a continuous little length of time, and I decided to split it into two. So this is part one of the two-part series, I guess you could say. This video will be talking about the first two seasons of Bridgerton and a little bit of, not a little bit, but the connection with the books, and then I'll go into talking a little bit about the third season, and then it'll stop. But I just thought that the original video was way too long to post, so I just wanted to cut it down. Also, at some point during the video, the audio changes, so if you notice that, I do apologize. I was recording on my mic, and then my mic died, and so I started just recording on my phone audio, so it is going to sound quite different. But I hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, here's the video. Okay, so hello. I have not posted anything on my YouTube channel for the longest time. Last thing I posted was an Until Dawn playthrough that I did on my PS4, but that is so outdated. Anyway, so today I kind of just want to talk about Bridgerton. This is something that I got into I'm gonna say probably at the beginning of 2023. And the funny thing about it is that before I actually watched the show, I always thought it was kind of silly how everybody was so obsessed with it. And then it wasn't the show that got me obsessed with it. It was actually the books. Mind you, I read the fourth book first. So I read Colin and Penelope's story first, and that's the newest season that's coming out in May. And then the second part of that season is coming out in June. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the show. Ooh, I'm breathing really heavy on the mic. My bad. The show and, my predictions and kind of the correlation with the books. So I have read all the way up to the fifth book. I've completely finished the fifth book, which is To Sir Philip with Love, which is Eloise's story. And I'm on the sixth one, which is Francesca's story, which is When He Was Wicked. So I think generally Bridgerton is a really interesting series when you think about it, because when it compares the books and the shows, obviously there are differences. Whenever you have a book or a show that is inspired or based on a book, there will always be differences. I feel like this is a very no duh kind of statement, but to me, I have started to actually realize that I love the books a lot more than I love the series, which is something that happens not very often at all. I tend to really, really love movies and series over the books that they're based on. For example, If I Stay, maybe it's because I read the book after I saw the movie, which I literally read the book recently and watched the movie when it came out. So I've been watching the movie for years and just read the book. So maybe that's a little silly, haha, on my part, but yeah. But I do like the books, the Bridgerton books, more than I like the series. For the Bridgerton books, it's not actually the first series that Julia Quinn wrote. I'm in the process of collecting all of the rest of the books that Julia Quinn has written, or been a part of writing. And I'm almost there, actually, which is so funny because I have a really bad addiction to buying her books specifically. I think I have an order of 9 of her books coming in. It's bad. It's actually bad. But besides that, let's kind of talk about how these last two seasons have been going as comparison to the book. So as far as the first season goes, it is actually very, very similar to the book. Oh, if you do not want any spoilers, stop now. Go watch the show, read the series if you want to. But do not keep listening. Do not keep listening if you want no spoilers. Because this is all spoilers. And this is predictions. And this is just going to be me really rambling on as it's been so far. Anyway, but for the first book, it was actually quite similar to the show. A lot of what happens, like the essaying, does happen in the book. I'm not very like, I don't know. I'm not that willing to say essaying just because it's like that is so much more violent than what happened, but it was still forced and still wrong in different ways. A lot of the same sequences still happen. A few of the differences, I would say, is probably like in the show when they give birth to their first kid, it's a son immediately. And in the book, it's actually it's actually a girl, and they don't get a son until their fourth child. Another is that Daphne is actually in, I believe, her third or fourth season and was never named the diamond of the season and never had tons and tons and tons of suitors. So that's different. One thing that I hate though, one little thing that I'm going to mention and probably kind of talk shit about through the entire thing, they always talk about how the females in the series are not attractive or not very attractive. Like for Daphne, they're like they just kind of like comment about how all the Bridgertons look alike and how Daphne doesn't escape it, and I feel like that's kind of bullshit because like give me somebody who looks like a fucking beauty queen, because come on, praise the girlies. Like don't fucking tear them down because, you know, I don't know, like just tell me that she's pretty because I know she is. And obviously the actors who play the characters are very, very gorgeous, and it's just funny to me that they like play it off like they're really, like in the book they play it off as if like they're really not that attractive, but then like in the show you have like Phoebe playing her and like she's obviously gorgeous. One of the very obvious changes is the race of some of the characters, which, I mean, come on. All of the races make sense to me. Like, this version makes more sense to me. I like it a lot more because of the diversity. I think it was a very good and creative choice making like Kate and that whole situation different, which I'm not going to get to just yet because I feel like I still need to talk a little bit more about season 1 and book 1. But you know, it's still a really good way to like change it up, obviously make it a little more modern than what would have been back then. In the books, Simon is described as white. I think what I remember is like his description was like he was white but more fair looking, with dark brown hair and icy blue eyes. And I think the only thing that I'm slightly upset about is the icy blue eyes part is because 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 the icy blue eyes was kind of like very like important to the plot, but at the end of the day, I feel like Reggae John like did a really good job, and I am honestly really here for it. Like he did, like I said, a really good job at playing the role. His little eyebrows make me giggle, and yeah, um, fun little like additions to it that sometimes were not that fun was Marina Thompson. In the books, Marina Thompson does not show up until the 5th book. Does not show up until Eloise's book. And the differences is that Marina Thompson in the first season is supposed to be like a person, like a girl that the Featherings took in because the old Lord Featherington had so much debt that she was how he was paying off one of the people he was in debt to. But at the end of the day, her little like thingy with Colin was really annoying because I was somebody who read the 4th book first. I knew where he was going, and I was very here for it because I love Penelope. So I was very here for it. And I didn't like how they just threw Marina Thompson in there when she had no correlation to those other characters in the show. And even more technically, she's supposed to be Colin's cousin in the book. So it's like, girl, what are you doing? That's his cousin. And I mean, I know it's different, but like, come on, that's his fucking cousin in the book. Like, it's just weird. But they also changed it to where Marina Thompson's kids aren't actually Sir Philip's. They're his late brothers, even though in the books they are actually Sir Philip's kids. And I actually do really like the way that things ended with her story at the end of season 1. Was when they got into the carriage, she looked very like solemn. Is solemn the right word? I'm not sure. Just sad and unhappy with like her current situation, because that's kind of how it was in the book. Like, she was severely depressed in the book. More on that later though. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. More on that later though. But as far as the book and the first season goes, it was done really, really well. All of the characters really did play their role very, very well. I keep on saying the word well, but like that's the best thing I can come up with. And now here's like the biggest spoiler. So like, honestly, past this point, if you have not watched Bridgerton or have not read any of the books, I would not listen anymore. Here it is. At the end of season 1, they do reveal that Penelope Featherington is Lady Whistledown, which is correct in the books and does carry. So very, very happy that they actually did keep that the same, because they could have changed it. It would not have made sense if they changed it, but I would have been really interested to see how they would have worked that out if they did change it. But yeah, they didn't, so we're all good. So season 2 actually starts out very similar to the book. Or not really starts out the same as the start of the book, but it is actually pretty similar to the way that the book goes. Anthony talks about how he's finding, he's gonna find his bride, all of that. And it's quite different from how the show portrays the death of Edmund. In the book, the person that's actually there when Edmund dies is Eloise. She's the one that's, I think it was like she was on his shoulders, and she had put her down to like collect flowers or something like that, and they were like giggling, talking, da 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 da, and a bee stung him, and he fell over, and she ran crying into the house, could not speak, and Violet runs outside with her, and then Anthony doesn't find out until like hours later, because he was out with Benedict and they were doing things like hanging out, brother shit, I don't know. And Anthony doesn't see him until like he's already laid into his bed, like already been dead for hours. This is so morbid, I do apologize, but he's already been dead for hours because of the bee sting. And it's very tragic and it's crazy. Also, if you have not read Bridgerton Happily Ever After, in Bridgerton Happily Ever After, at the end, it has Violet's story with Edmund, and it's not very long. It doesn't have too much in the story. It's like a chapter or two, I would say, maybe that long. And in the story, it describes her point of view of Edmund's death. And in this, it's not funny, but she was crying, and then at some point she really looked at Edmund and realized he was dead, and she passed out, but like fell on Eloise when she passed out. So she was passed the fuck out on top of Eloise, and it's not funny. But it's just like, I can imagine like an 8-year-old Eloise Bridgerton with Violet on top of her. Also in that story, it's very different of how Hyacinth's birth went, because in the show, it says that it was like very traumatic and that there was a possibility of the two of them dying. But in the book, it's described as like it was very easy birth. There wasn't a lot of screaming, there wasn't a lot of pain, it was very simple, and it didn't describe Violet as depressed afterwards. She was more or less just focused on trying to make Hyacinth's situation better. And like, it even had a scene in there where Daphne, Eloise, and Francesca were all in the room after Violet had given birth, and they're like, I don't know who said it. I think it might have been Daphne or maybe Francesca. It doesn't matter. It's not like it doesn't matter. But one of the three of them was like, she's never gonna know Dad. And Violet was like, yeah, you're right. And then one of them was like, we can always like describe him to her. And then they started like naming off like characteristics of how Edmund was as a dad. And so that kind of like was like, oh, that's like a really cute moment, but they did not put that in the show. And it was a little sad because it was like, I felt like that moment was like really cute for the book, but I guess it's fine that it wasn't in there. Anyways, going back. But yeah, it does paint a bit of a different story. In the show, it does kind of hint to the idea that Anthony is a bit scared of dying early, and that's why he doesn't want love in his relationship, which is a big thing in the book, is that his biggest fear is that he is not going to surpass his dad, because in every other thing he's like, I'm not surpassing my father, so I'm not going to surpass my father in age, and so that means that I only have 7 more years to live, and so I'm going to get married, I'm gonna have children and sire an heir, and then I'm gonna die. I think it was like at 38, because it was like impossible in his mind that he was gonna live past his father's age, which in the book he does. I think one of the epilogues talks about his like 50th birthday or something like that. It was close to 50, or I think it was like 48. But yeah, it talks about how he's so scared of that, but then in the show it's not as highlighted. which is fine. I think Jonathan Bailey does like a really good job at playing Anthony, because in the first season it does show his really aggressive, like even throughout the second season, his really aggressive, angry kind of like persona that Lord Anthony Bridgerton has, because he's just been dealt like crazy cards in his life. Like his dad dies when he's 19, and all of a sudden like he's the head of the family and he has to take care of land and property, and I think land and property are the same thing, but like all of his family members and budgeting and everything, and it's just a lot on his plate. And it's not like anybody in his family really understands where he's coming from, so it's kind of like it's crazy to kind of deal with that kind of situation. Then on the other side, you also have Kate Sharma, who, let me just say, the beautiful, wonderful Simone Ashley, bro, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous actor. Loved her as Kate. Loved. So the big difference, I think, in the show, obviously there's a lot of big differences with the show and her family, but in the show, there is no drama with the Sheffields, so I think that's really interesting. The Sheffields don't the Sheffields don't have drama, because I'm pretty sure the Sheffields are her dad's family. So the father's family, not Mary's family. And so that's interesting how they changed that. And so Kate was born with the name Sheffield, but was just born with a different mother. And after her mother died, he remarried Mary. He remarried Mary, and they had another daughter, Edwina. The names, other than the last name, stays the same. I don't know where they got Sharma from. I don't think that was a thing in the book, so that's interesting. But yeah, in the book there's like no beef with the Sheffields. She's a Sheffield, she was born a Sheffield, so there's no beef. But in the show, the beef is that like Mary was a Sheffield. She went and married a poor Indian man, Sharma, and that's why there's like a lot of gossip about Kate and Edwina and stuff like that. Or there's like worry about gossip with Kate and Edwina. But at the end of the day, Mary, even in the book as well as the show, was like, I loved you since the day that I met you. Like, I've always loved you as my daughter. That's who you are to me. I think near the end of the movie, or not the end of the movie, the end of the show, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe the end of the book, actually. Maybe that didn't happen at all, but I think, like, Kate called her mom, or, like, mama or mother or something like that, near the end of something. And I could be wrong. I really could be. I don't know. I don't know. I love Mary. She's a really cool stepmom. She's a really cool mom. Obviously there for her little girlies. So there for it. But another really interesting difference is that Edwina did not care that fucking much about, I apologize for my language. Edwina did not care that much about Anthony and Kate in the book. Like, Anthony had been courting Edwina, and Kate had been telling, like, Edwina that he was a bad guy and not to, not to allow her to, like, be swept away by his charms and stuff like that. And I think Edwina never really got too attached to Anthony, because when the whole scene happened in the book, where they were like, okay, when they were forced to marry in the book, Um, Edwina didn't care. She was actually really happy for Kate. Um, but in the show, she cared a lot. Like, a lot. In the show, it was like, you were only ever giving me everything that you wanted because you wanted to give me everything in life so I didn't lack anything, and it was like this huge drama that really messed with their like sisterhood. But in the book it never happened. Like there was never any drama about it. As far as the B scene goes the with the show and the book. So in the show, the B scene is like they're like arguing a little bit about like how Kate feels about Anthony and the whole Edwina thing. And a bee comes up and like she's like swatting it, and Anthony's like, don't do that, don't do that. And she swats it more and it stings her. He obviously starts having a panic attack, and he's like incoherent, like he's breathing really heavy and shit like that. And so she puts his hand on her chest and goes, I'm okay, like there's no problem, and like starts cooling down their breath, and then they almost kiss but they don't. And like he runs away or something like that because somebody's coming up. But in the book, it's very it's different. I'm not gonna say it's very different, but it's different. What happens is that she and him were, well, I think she was walking through like this little hedge maze or something like that in the backyard of Aubrey Hall, and Anthony ends up doing the same thing, and then they catch up to each other, and he's like talking to her about the whole situation with Edwina. I'm pretty sure it was like the same kind of conversation, if not like at least similar. And she's like, I don't know, they were sitting on a bench, and I think this was at the point where she was actually okay with it. Like, being around him and the way that he is with his family had made her be okay with him marrying Edwina and all of that. But then a bee comes up and it stings her chest. And because his thought process, as well as like in the show, is that bees kill people, he gets down on one knee in front of her and starts sucking, I'm putting air quotes up, sucking the venom out of her boob, essentially. And Violet Bridgerton, Lady Danbury, and Lady Featherington happen upon them doing this. And and that's how in the book Anthony and Kate get forced to marry, instead of in the show where near the end they ultimately just realize that they both love each other and they want to do this for, they want to do this for themselves, like they want to be together for themselves and just ultimately just decide to be together. But yeah, in the book in the book it is quite different. That whole scene happens, and to make sure there's no scandal, they bribe I'm pretty sure they bribe Lady Featherington not to say anything about what she saw, and they end up getting married. And Anthony's thing is like, he doesn't love her, but he knows he has like passion for her. Like throughout the entire book, he has passion for her, like sexual passion for Kate. And so he's thinking like, that's enough. Like, I don't love her. Like, and that's the thing that he keeps like, I don't love her, so it's okay. But it helps to have passion. Like, so I'm okay with having passion, but I'm not okay with having love. Eventually, he figures out that he truly does love Kate. I think this is after the accident. In the show, the accident is right after they have like sex the next morning. Like she goes, like she tries to clear her head and like realizes what she did was like quote unquote fucked up, which really it wasn't. And she goes out to try to like clear her head, and she's riding the horse, and lightning strikes and the horse like knocks her off, and she hits her head really hard. Anthony finds her. Plot continues. And after that accident in the show is when he realizes that he loves her. So it's kind of similar, but really not, because they don't get married until after that, like a whole episode after that, because when he goes to propose to her after she wakes up, she's like, no, you're only doing this because it's out of like obligation, you don't love me. And then she's like, I'm returning back to India. And he's like, but then she finally realizes, like, he does this whole monologue about how, like, I love you, like, we should do this, like, because I love you. And she's like, I love you too. It's like, finally, like, y'all both have this passion for each other. So many intense moments. It's actually really funny because I went back and annotated the show for my friend because she does not like watching like sexual scenes at all. And so I went back and annotated and was like, this is how many sex scenes are in the first season, this is how many are in the second season, and this is how many that are in like Queen Charlotte. Queen Charlotte has the most. Then the first season, and then the last season, or not the last season, but the second season, which only has like maybe 3, and then some ass shots, like some like scenes where it's just like somebody's ass is on the screen, which is funny to me. But for the two who have the most passion in the book and technically have the most passion in the show, have the least sex scenes, which I'm okay with. I can feel a little awkward when the sex scenes come up, so I'm okay with not seeing them. But yeah, needless to say, they have a lot of sex in the book, which is kind of weird, but it's not weird. It's the kind of book that it is. It's literally like a historical Regency romance. So get ready to, if you're gonna read the books, get ready to read sex. Like it's an odd experience, or at least for the first time it is, and then it gets meh. It just gets normal. Like you're like, oh okay, they're having sex. But in the book, the accident is Edwina has this suitor, and I can't remember what the suitor's name is, and I actually don't have the book with me, so I could not tell you what the suitor's name was. But Anthony was supposed to go out on the promenade with Kate, Edwina, and this suitor, and I don't exactly remember why he didn't go. I think it was just something like he was realizing that he did actually love Kate, and he thought that the best way not to be more in love with her was to create some distance. And so he was like, I can't go with you, but didn't really tell her why. Either way, she is in the park with Edwina and the other suitor, and he crashes the carriage. The suitor crashes the carriage, and Edwina scratches, but fine. Suitor completely fine. Kate truly fucked. Like her leg is broken. She's stuck in the carriage. She's got scratches and cuts and bruises everywhere. And when they're finally able to get her out and get her with, like, Anthony saves her basically, and when they get her out and get her with the doctor who helps fix her leg, he's like sitting there and he like proclaims his love to her and like, I love you, I truly love you. Like basically just like tells him that he's in love with her, and she reciprocates the feelings obviously. And so that's the accident in the book, and that's how they find out that they're in love with each other. Also, something that I didn't talk about, which I think is really interesting, is how Kate is afraid of thunder in the book, but it's not as much of a thing in the show. I think you see a little bit of it in the library scene, but it's still just like you can equate that to other things. Like you, when I first watched it without reading the book, I thought the reason why she flinched was because the thunder made her realize that they were about to kiss and she needed to back up from him. So that was my thought process when I saw that scene. So I don't feel like people would equate that to her being afraid of thunder. Also, the thing with the horse is like, it's not like it's not like you can analyze that scene and be like, oh, she's afraid of thunder. The horse was afraid of thunder and it fucking threw her off. So, but in the book, she is severely afraid of thunder, and you do have a library scene where she goes into the library because she can't sleep, kind of like the show, and she's looking at the books, and then it starts like, or wait, no, it's already raining and storming outside, and so she couldn't sleep. That's why she went into the library, was looking at books, and then it got worse, and she hid under a table. Anthony's walking back, I think, to his room from his office. And remember, it's been a little while since I've read the book. And he sees that something's like a candle or something was left on in the library, and he's like, who's dumbass left a candle in the library? And so he goes in there and he finds her and he like comforts her. And he's like, oh, why are you so afraid of thunder? And it takes her a while to realize why. Because she had to ask Mary why she was so afraid of thunder. And Mary was like, oh, your dad told me it was because when Kate's mom was dying, because she got really sick, Kate had walked into the room. I don't know if it was to say goodbye or just to talk to her mom. I think it was to say goodbye. But when she went in there, her mom was looking frail and like obviously like very like dead looking. Like she was dying. And it was raining, and the situation was kind of like thunder went off right as soon as her mom died, and the windows were open and the rain was coming in, and the thunder crashed and her mom died like right in front of her. And so her thought process was like she connected rain and thunder and storming to the death of her mother, and that's why it was so dreadful. And that's why whenever she thought about thunder, rain, and storming, she thought she was gonna die. And so that was like another like similarity that her and Anthony had, was that they had like an irrational fear of dying from something that, you know, isn't even something that might happen to them. Like the possibility of Kate dying from thunder, low. The possibility of Anthony dying from a bee sting, not that low, but still low compared to his dad, or like just dying at the same age or before the age of his dad's death. But those were kind of like the differences with like their love story. As far as like the season goes, like a lot of the stuff that was happening with like Eloise, like the whole love story between her and what the fuck was his name? I know it started with like a T, like something, but that whole like situation was kind of weird to me, because it was like, oh, his name was Theo Sharp. Yeah, sorry, I looked it up because I was like, I don't remember. But you know, that whole love story with Theo Sharp like doesn't make any sense to me, because it's like he has no correlation in the book whatsoever. But I mean, I guess like added in makes her more suspicious to Cullen, made the whole point of like Penelope writing that article about her, you know, more, I don't know, not understandable, but like, you know, easier for her to be like, oh, it wasn't Eloise, it's somebody else, it's me, but you don't know that, to quote unquote save Eloise. I did not like, okay, I'm not going to talk about that right now, but I'm going to put that aside and I'm going to tell you what it is. Like, I'm going to be like, okay, this is what I put to the side. The new Lord Featherington, Jake Featherington, I guess his name is, funny how they. So this is the end of the first video. I really do hope you guys enjoyed it. The second video is solely about basically the third season and how I wish it goes. I hope it goes. Not wish it, but yeah, thank you for listening in. Bye bye.